Hello, my name is Yoav Caspi. I'm an architect and a senior lecturer at the Kingston University and the Architectural Association. And today I'm going to share with you a keynote presentation on contemporary art sculpting bas-reliefs. On the left is one of my reliefs, which is called Mask One. It is the relief that initiated my PhD, which is looking at masking and unmasking, preserving Jewish heritage, Jewish and Persian heritage through architectural ornamentation. And on the right, Waddington Cousteau by David Cohn Architects is one of the exhibitions that I designed as an architect at David Cohn Architects. A bit more about me. So I worked as an architect at David Cohn Architects, as I've said. On the left is New College at Oxford. This is a new campus in the heart of Oxford that borrows from the Cotswold architectural typology and language. And on the right, there is the shortlist competition to the National Gallery that I have prepared alongside David Cohn Architects. Both of these projects demonstrate my interest into architectural ornamentation and how using architectural ornamentation can preserve culture, identity, heritage, and history. In New College, for example, I was in charge of developing the art strategy for this very large project, and one of the items that required careful consideration was the relief of William of Wykeham, which is the founder of this college. You can see here on the left the relief adorning one of the buildings, the facades of one of the buildings. And on the right, there is the detail where we looked at how this relief is embedded within the wall and maintains structural integrity. There are other areas where architectural ornamentation is celebrated through this project. For example, the gargoyles of New College and the decoration of the Ancaster weatherbed stone, which is essentially the cladding that is surrounding the facade. This is a project that I have led in David Cohn Architects, which is located in the Gallery of Waddington Cousteau. It celebrated the work of female sculptors in the 1960s. And as I previously said, I am currently working as a senior lecturer at Kingston School of Art, where I have recently initiated my PhD. I also teach a course at Kingston School of Art that is tied very closely with my research, examining how architectural ornamentation can be used to celebrate culture, identity, and heritage, as I said previously, both internally and externally on buildings. These are some examples of my students who explored different approaches to wall tiles or reliefs that will adorn their buildings. And I also teach this course at the Architectural Association. Both of these are universities that are located in London. Again, tiles and relief making as a way to celebrate culture and identity. I am particularly interested in the field of advanced fabrication techniques in the courses that I teach, and also in my PhD and in my practice, Yoka Design, which is a studio that focuses on relief making and architectural ornamentation. I use CNC fabrication and 3D printing to prepare molds, which are then cast either with cement, concrete, plaster, jasmonite, and other materials. I question how these advanced fabrication techniques can help us achieve level of ornamentation that has been quite difficult to achieve in the past 60 or 70 years, or even more than that, really. Architectural ornamentation that was more prevalent in the 18th, the 17th century, and even earlier than that, relied on slavery. And today, we're able to utilize more advanced fabrication techniques that require less time, that are more efficient, and therefore reduce labor, reduce costs, and still achieve a very high level of ornamentation. So I'm particularly studying how reliefs and how masking has been used in both Persian and Jewish identities, as I shared beforehand. Here on the left is the first relief that I have prepared that follows a relief from the 500 before Christ, that was displayed on the palace of Persian King Darius I. It shows a relief of arches. So there are several arches. But here you can see how I reinterpret that relief into a contemporary language. This is a second relief I worked on, and I am continuing to develop this typology, aiming to study specifically how typologies and languages within Jewish and Persian culture can help me develop a specific architectural and design typology. So as I said before, I'm particularly interested in CNC fabrication and how that can be used to prepare molds. CNC stands for Computer Numerical Control. It is a very it is a fabrication process that is very common throughout many industries. In the architectural industry, not so much yet, but I do believe that it's going to become more and more popular. So in the automotive industry, it's used to carve very specialized pieces. In the furniture industry used to prepare furniture, such as tables and chairs. In architectural practice, it's mainly now used to prepare site models, but I foresee that in the next few decades, it's going to become a much more prevalent mold making technique, and also used to prepare construction elements. So this is an example of a site model that was prepared by David Kohn Architects, where the curvature of the proposal kind of suggested or alluded to the fact that it would be quite efficient to prepare that with CNC fabrication. I often get asked, what is the difference between laser cutting and CNC? They are both very valid ways of developing site models and architectural research. Laser cut models have the definitive kind of lines, and on the right, the CNC model is much more smooth. Either of those are very useful in very particular cases, but on the left, for example, you could argue that it can be used to argue that the buildings, the skyscrapers that are on the right side are perhaps not as tall because the hill, because of the lines, appear quite steep. And on the right, on the contrary, the way that the building is situated within the landscape feels very sensitive, very contextualized. So it really is both very valid ways of making architecture, and both architectural ornamentation, art, reliefs, but it's just different typologies, really. It is important to highlight that CNC is a subtractive fabrication technique, which means that material is extracted from material. This is contrary to additive fabrication techniques such as 3D printing. Each one of them has advantages and disadvantages, but the one that I tend to highlight in my courses and also question in my PhD research is the waste of material. So once you mill out foam block or a wood block, you are essentially omitting or you're releasing this dust that ends up in landfill, which is waste, and in the context of climate crisis and the way that material is embodied carbon or releases embodied carbon to the environment, we need to be careful not to waste material and be considerate when it comes to material. I use Rhino and RhinoCam to prepare my reliefs, my tiles. I use Rhino to model it in 3D, and then RhinoCam is the add-on software that sits on top of Rhino and helps me prepare two paths, which are essentially G codes. That tell the CNC machine to travel to particular areas to achieve the desired design. I have been investigating this idea of research for a few years now. These are one of my first reliefs that I made that are inspired by Isamu Noguchi, a Japanese and American landscape architect. Noguchi is quite important to my research because he adopts a very sculptural approach to land art, to sculpting, to architectural ornamentation, and his work is quite varied in a way. So he made quite a lot of sculpture. This, for example, is a very important piece in my view. It's called Interlocking Sculptures. And it essentially reflects on his experience as a Japanese man living in America. At the time, it was around 1940s, 1950s, after World War II, after the attack of Pearl Harbor. And Noguchi has felt the alienated feeling of being a Japanese man in America and found ways to express this through his art. I find that very relevant to my own practice and my PhD research. So these are sculptures that appear human in form, but also very alienated, very abstract. And this is another piece that I showed earlier. It's called Contour Playground, and it is specifically important for me because of this quote. I felt obliged to answer all the dire warnings of the danger to which I would expose small children with my play equipment, and so designed a contoured playground. This would be proof against any serious accidents, being made up entirely of earth modulations. The exercise was to be derived automatically and running up and down the curved surfaces. There was various interest for hiding, for sliding, for games, and water would flow in the summer. I find that quite inspiring because here the curvature has a very specific intention. It's to allow children to imagine, to play carelessly, and to find their own way to express their play and their imagination within a playground. Isamu has, as I said, quite a wide range of sculptures, reliefs, and also landscape design proposals. So this is his proposal to the US Pavilion Expo 70. There's a wonderful use here of color and imaginative play space that connects to the contour playground example that I showed previously. This is quite a stark, different example. This tortured earth is memorial proposal for a terror attack that happened in Africa, in North Africa, Ghana, I believe. And here on the right, Clay Mountain, Isamu Noguchi, sorry, another proposal by Isamu Noguchi for a playground in New York, taking up one of the squares. And I think there's something quite interesting about how the texture and the reflective, the harsh kind of blackness of the bronze is taking front stage in both of these pieces. Here are some other sculptures such as My Arizona and Yellow Landscape. These are reliefs that are hanging on the wall, and here there are additional add-on items that allow this sculptures to really kind of take shape, three-dimensionality. This is Lunar Landscape, and this is Lunar Landscape Woman. Another set of artists that I find very inspiring, sorry, is the Zero Art movement. You might know quite a few artists that follow under this category, alongside Yves Klein and Jan Schoflen. Zero is so that as art movement kind of took place mainly around the 1960s, following again World War II, where artists needed to find a common ground and a way to share a discourse in a most kind of welcoming and yeah, kind of a flexible and easy way, really. And Zero, the name of the art movement, Zero, followed a marketing strategy because Zero is used mostly in many, many languages to describe the numerical number, sorry, zero. So yeah, two artists that I want to talk about is Turi Semti and Enrico Castellani. Both of them, again, are inspiring my research and my work into relief making and tile making. Semti was particularly interested in ovals. I think it's a wonderful example of how study of a very particular geometry form can really show depth of research in how still there is movement, there is tension, there is moments of calmness just by shifting the oval and placing it in different locations. So here on the left, 9 ovali bianchi is 9 white ovals, and on the right is 1 ovali bianchi, one white oval. Here, the use of color is also very interesting. So the black, glossy black becomes quite harsh, and the proximity of those two ovals on the right create a moment of tension. And also there's something about the kind of the brush strokes that feel as if these were vessels floating at sea. On the right here, the red and the distance again between those ovals creates really interesting dynamic movement and really interesting qualities of light and shadow. Enrico Castellani employs a slightly different approach, using points and stretching them on a canvas up and down, again, to create this texture and movement across the canvas. And the distance between those points essentially create this dynamic pattern. There is a really interesting set of examples, such as here on the left, the superficial blue by Enrico Castellani, where the height of the points reduce as they move from left to right, which creates this really interesting gradient of movement, and the quality here of light and shadow is really interesting. And also a very interesting connection to drawings, or in this case, it's an etching. This is an untitled piece, but you can see how Enrico Castellani is studying the position of the points to create a sense of movement. I think generally, as an architect, it is very inspiring for me to see how these sculptures integrate drawing through their practice. So as I showed the examples before with Isamu Noguchi, here the interlocking sculpture is essentially a study, a drawing that shows how it's almost a construction manual of how Isamu Noguchi is thinking about how to put these different components together. And I think it definitely becomes an art piece in itself. And here, even more so, where in Lida, Isamu Noguchi is created kind of an art piece in its own right. So 6 Paris Abstractions is a drawing where Isamu Noguchi is contemplating about how this sculpture comes to be and how I think as a diptych, they work very well together. I'm going to, so yeah, maybe just to briefly also talk about how so I'll conclude about talking about how that practice is has influenced my own approach. So this is an example of flowing center, one of the reliefs that I showed earlier that is inspired by Flowing Center by Samonoguchi. And as an architect, drawing is a very kind of fundamental part of my practice. So, similar to Noguchi and Enrico Castellani, I commence my work by drawing a plan, which is essentially a composition. I'm showing only one example here, but often that is a very iterative process where I draw many compositions. So after I draw composition by plan, I start to think about the different heights. So the way the geometries kind of interact with one another. Here it's interesting. Here in this particular relief, the each shape has kind of a distance between one another, but in the mask that I've recently developed, the connection or the kind of the interacting surfaces are often adjoining, so they touch one another, which create kind of technically they become it becomes much more complex to model. But regardless, after I've kind of drew the composition, I start by drawing sketches that essentially determine the height of the different pieces, and through that I kind of start to develop these three-dimensional, the kind of the relief aspect of this artwork, again thinking about kind of the different heights. Okay, so yeah, this is the approach that I'm currently investigating in my research, and I will continue to develop this research, particularly in investigating how forms of masking has been developed in both Jewish and Persian identities, and how that could be incorporated into the building industry, the built environment, utilizing advanced fabrication techniques such as CNC fabrication and 3D printing to create molds. In a way that is more efficient and therefore reduces labor and allows us to preserve heritage, identity, and cultural memory. Thank you very much for watching this keynote presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you.